Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Reward Strategies for 2021 and Beyond, organized by DecodeHR and Laserbeam Software. My name is Junjie, but you can call me JJ, and I am your moderator for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I'm really glad to see all of you here. So without further ado, let me just introduce you to today's speakers. First and foremost, we have Evelyn Chow, the founder of DecodeHR, a strategic HR consulting firm based in Singapore with clients and technology partners from around the world. In 2019, Evelyn launched dcHR.tech to build a vibrant and open community focused on HR tech. She is a thought leader in leadership and digital transformation and shares her knowledge regularly at events, seminars, and local universities. Evelyn is also an agile HR advocate. Next, we have Naveen Veda. He is the founder of Laserbeam Software, a US-based HR talent management software company. He has over 20 years of industry experience in delivering compensation solutions and strategies for global companies of different sizes. He specializes in building compensation plans and models for effective rewards programs for employees. He has written multiple blogs in this area and helps companies save by helping them make the right pay for performance models. And last but definitely not least, we have John Robinson. John has 30 years of human resources consulting experience combined with extensive knowledge of financial markets and advises the remuneration communities and senior executives of a wide range of companies. John served on the Singapore Central Provident Fund's advisory panel from 2006 to 2008, as well as the government's Economic Review Committee CPF group in 2002. Hello to the three of you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello there.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for joining us. We are super excited to have all of you with us this afternoon.
All right. It's great to have all of you here. But before we carry on, let me just give you a brief idea of how it's going to happen. So we'll begin with a quick introduction of our webinar with Evelyn, before moving on to a quick conversation with our compensation expert, John. And after that, we will see how we can harness the benefits of technology to accelerate the entire rewards design process with Naveen. Naturally, we will end off with a Q&A session. So, one last thing, the housekeeping rules before we begin. This is a 1-hour webinar. All attendees are automatically on mute, so there is absolutely no need to mute yourself or turn off your sound. This webinar will be recorded and the video recording will be made available to all registrants. There is a Q&A button at the top or bottom of your Zoom panel. Feel free to ask any questions at any time during the webinar. As mentioned, there will be a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar where we'll take as many questions as we can. But from past experience, we don't always get the chance to answer everyone, so we strongly encourage you to leave your name behind when you ask your question. But of course, if you are not comfortable doing that, you can always choose to submit an anonymous question. All questions will only be visible to the panelists. And last but not least, we will be sharing the decks used in the webinar, so sit back, enjoy, and be inspired. Without further ado, I will hand the time over to Evelyn to take you through the start of the webinar. Evelyn, over to you.
Thank you, Junjie. Thank you, everyone. I just want to let you know ahead of time that we will be going pretty fast because we want to keep the entire webinar within 60 minutes. So we will, in some instances, be blazing through some of the slides. But as Junjie mentioned, we will be sharing the deck with you, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions. And we don't think this will be the last of this series of webinars, so there will be more to come. And your feedback will be greatly welcome. So please remember to share your feedback with us towards the end of the session. You will be given the opportunity to do so. All right, without further ado, we will get started. This is a little bit about us, DecodeHR, but we shan't go into much details because we want to focus on the webinar. So today, these are the key focus points for us that we'll be sharing, like Junjie mentioned, by Naveen. But before that, there will be a chat with John Robinson, our compensation expert. These are some of the various areas that we plan to cover over this 60 minutes. We may not be able to deep dive into every area, but we certainly will try our best. And like I said, there will be opportunities for additional questions and follow-up. So maybe I can share a little bit as to why we decided to start this webinar, this series. I think the main focus was about how we can work with our community, people like you, companies and clients, to really craft reward strategies that will be impactful for 2021 and beyond. And that's because we know that it hasn't been a regular year for most of us, and things do need to change. So we ran a pre-webinar survey with some of you who signed up for this survey, for this webinar. And these are some of the results, just highlights of the results that we wanted to share with you in terms of key challenges facing employee engagement in the context of rewards. So you can see that creating effective strategies is actually an ongoing challenge. And we are very much conscious of that as well. So something to think about. And if we look at the next slide, the other challenge actually is around developing an incentive and reward program in the midst of these constraints, whether it's financial constraints, lack of expertise, lack of management buy-in, so on and so forth. These are some of the challenges. So we just wanted to share with you some highlights of the survey that we did. And we wanted to share with you as well on this total reward strategy model from World at Work, which we feel is very important for us to frame our thinking as we get into this session. Really, because external influences are very important, and we need to be very attuned to these external influences and really know, what are the factors that will shape our landscape. And that will directly actually impact your HR strategy, your business strategy, and your organizational culture. And of course, that would in turn impact your total reward strategy. And at the end of the day, the main focus, as we know, is about attracting, motivating, engaging, and retaining your employees. The other model that we wanted to share with you, again, to frame our thinking, is this total reward strategy, deep diving into influences. As we can see on the left side, there are influences that we need to be really critically aware of. Strategy, culture, workforce, and what's happening in the market, right? And so we're talking about labor market, for example, and how does that, again, impact your HR strategy and actually, in turn, impacts the various elements in your total reward strategy. So Naveen will be deep diving into the compensation area. And because it's such a broad area, he'll be addressing it from a specific point of view. Again, I'll leave that to Naveen to share. So I think one of the things that we really need to think about, it's already March, companies are thinking about, in terms of future of work, what kind of environment, what kind of infrastructure do we want to put in place? What are our key focus areas? So as an example, you're talking about your workforce strategy. What is the workforce strategy of your organization? So I think that's an important piece to think about and to consider. So these are just examples. It could be any of these areas of focus, or it could be others. And we will run the poll. So if I could ask Junjie to help run the poll now. This will be a quick poll. We'd be great to hear your thoughts as to your company's workforce strategy. What is your company's top priority? We'll share the results in a bit. Just want to make sure everybody has enough time. Okay, looks like we have 73% who have voted. Shall we end the poll and have a look at the results, Junjie? Okay, interesting. Top priority is building collective experience and expertise while embracing automation and reskilling. That's the top priority, followed by coaching, collaboration, mentoring, and team motivation. Very interesting. And then, of course, you have preserving jobs, followed by building multidisciplinary teams, and lastly, strengthen mental health. Very interesting results here, which we will also share after the webinar. Something for us to reflect and think about. Yeah, much to chew on. Thank you. And we will continue to have a look at our slides so we can carry on. We're going to look at what your strategy could look like. Here we go. Back into the groove. So again, looking at what we have just selected for your workforce strategy, how does that impact your total reward strategy? So if you're going to focus on upskilling and embracing automation, as most of you have chosen to do so, then it means that you're going to emphasize development, right? And then how are you going to use incentives or rewards in order to drive that workforce strategy? So these are some of the things that we'll be talking about. So again, I just want to be able to share sort of the relationship and the connection between external influences, HR strategy, workforce strategy, and how that finally impacts your total reward strategy. And interestingly enough, in the midst of this pandemic, according to the Gartner survey, more than 68% of organizations have actually introduced new rewards. So this is just to give you a sense of what are some of the new rewards that have been introduced by many companies. For us as an organization, we have also introduced new rewards internally. And that's based on feedback that we have received from the team and on observations of the landscape. And you must be thinking that, you know, how am I going to create new rewards when I am watching my wallet? So there are ways to think about how you can be creative, create budget-friendly ways to reward your employees. We really like this article by Media Bistro, and just sharing with you some of the different ways you can be creative, and the impact of this really can be tremendous. And now we move on to our segment with John. Hey, John.
Hey, hello. Hello,
Hi.
everyone.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Well, the genesis of this actually started in a cafe, right? In Do and Joe, and we were having a coffee, John, and we just couldn't stop talking because there was just so much to talk about. These are interesting times and challenging times, you know, to say the least. So there are a few questions that we thought we would want to bring up to share with everyone here. And the first one is actually around executive pay. You know, there's been a lot of emphasis on executive pay, you know, and how we should make sure that the top executives are kept really happy because they in turn, you know, bring in the results that will keep our shareholders happy. So we think this is an interesting question and would love to hear from you, John. We spoke about this, but I think it'd be great to share this with the community here as to how senior executives, you know, could be compensated in a way that enables them to focus on longer term performance, longer term growth, and not just be fixated with what's happening right now and delivering results for just, you know, this year, for example.
Yeah, Evan, I think we're in a really interesting time that that boards and company leadership should have a rethink about what their reward programs are and what they're trying to achieve by them. There is always a conflict where executives are told to produce short-term results and be held accountable to it, but they're also told to build for the future and to be held accountable for it. And the difficulty is that in a lot of situations, a lot of boards and their shareholders focus very much on the first of those, which is let's get the short-term results, and then let's get the short-term results, and next year let's get the short-term results, and never really stopping to think about building sustainable long-term a long-term company. And probably the simplest way to address it is to make sure that the performance measures for executive KPIs, as they're often referred to, have a balance, an absolutely distinct balance between short-term, medium-term, and possibly even long-term measures. So yes, we want to kind of get our profits for this year, but we want to do some things for building for over the medium term. We want to build the capacity of the organization, and usually that costs money, or at least it costs in terms of not maximizing short-term profits. So you'll have a combination of short-term goals and medium-term capacity building measures, and the executives are held accountable for both of those, and their rewards are then tied to giving equal weight, or to both of those, or the relevant weight for the organization at the time. So that's the sort of the, if you like, the ex ante, the before step is to establish the right balance of short-term and medium-term and possibly long-term performance measures. The ex post, the afterwards part is really how are we going to pay people? Are we going to pay them with cash, or are we going to pay them with the equity of the company? And if it's the equity of the company, what sort of conditions do we put on that for executives to hold that equity for a longer term, so that they're then in the same position as other shareholders? So what you'll see is possibly short-term results rewarded by cash, and the medium term rewarded by grants of equity, or some derivatives of those equity, like performance shares, or restricted shares, or options even, that link the outcome for the executive to the same outcome that shareholders are getting. So those would be the two considerations there.
And such a model, which is what you have just outlined, can apply to large organizations and even startups, right? It's
Yeah, I mean, startups, it actually does apply, because startups are typically not focused on the short term. That startups are focused on the medium term to raise funds, and the long term to create value for the founder shareholders. So it's actually the startups that need a more equity medium term, long term model than established companies, where their shareholders really want profits and dividends. So they are focused on the short term.
Great point. Thank you, John. And this leads us very nicely into the next question, right? Because we also spoke about this. There's so much emphasis on innovating, particularly during such challenging times when companies are expected to pivot and to relook at their entire business model. So there's a lot of actually emphasis and some pressure, I would say, on companies to innovate. So some companies I've read, have started talking about how they can incentivize or, use rewards. What's your perspective about this in terms of nurturing innovation?
I am very hesitant about feeling that rewards can create innovation. Innovation is a complex process, and maybe I should just clarify what I'm meaning by innovation. If it's things like minor improvements to productivity, like let's save on staples by using a paperclip, I mean, those productivity improvements are good things, but they tend to be very minor and very easy to implement. And for those, some form of recognition or even minor reward is appropriate. But real innovation, sort of, I'm calling it real innovation, but substantial innovation, which is around product distribution, customers, well, mostly product, mind you. That I don't think is a process that is easy to explain, understand, or incentivize. And I did mention to you that there's a marvelous book by a UK author called Matt Ridley, who was an evolutionary biologist by training. And his book is called How Innovation Works. And he compares the process of innovation to the process of evolution, or more precisely, the process of natural selection. And where kind of ideas compete and the ones that succeed in the market go forward. And I think that's very difficult to reward for. What I think is important is to create a culture where the people in an organization are given the space in order to come up with ideas, and the company can then have processes for testing those ideas in the market. So it's much more about culture and process than it is about individual sparks of brilliance that then need to be kind of rewarded in some way in order to get those sparks to happen. I don't think that's really the case.
Yeah. And I remember in our conversation, we also spoke about the importance of execution, because execution is often, in a way seen as less exciting, but actually the ability to execute well can affect an organization's ability to innovate, right? So we spoke about
that's right. I mean, I think I told you the story of being called into to meet someone who wanted to reward his staff for being innovative, and I said, well, no, you don't. You actually want them to reward them for executing flawlessly and delivering quality to your clients. And don't let innovation get in the way of that. Don't let innovation suddenly distract people from doing what's really important in their job. So again, what is your culture? Should your culture be one of flawless execution, or should your culture be one of freedom to I'm trying to think of the quote, but freedom to do whatever you like and see what happens. Again, it depends on the nature of the organization and the nature of their business.
Yeah, but I think what we agreed on is that it's really critical that leaders own the job of actually driving innovation, right? Leaders themselves.
Absolutely, and they need to create that environment and culture, but rather more importantly, they need to create the structures in their organization for this to happen.
Yeah, thank you. And we now move on to the next question, which is interesting because we said this question is really relevant and important, considering the environment that we're operating in right now, post-recovery for some, and some countries are still, in the midst of battling COVID.
Yeah, I mean, the question, should companies be reviewing their reward programs during this period? The simple answer to that question is yes. Everyone on this call, you should be reviewing your reward program. And to explain, I'll use a kind of two views of it. One, and both go back to strategy. So every company, every organization coming out of COVID would need some sort of strategic rethink. Their market will have changed, their customers will have different needs, their products will need to be adapted, their finances may be severely damaged or indeed severely improved. So and to address that, their go-to-market strategies, at the very least, will need to be reviewed. So thinking of that from two perspectives. One is the basic premise of incentives is if you pay people to do something. Sorry, I've got. If you pay people to do something, then that's what they'll do. And so if your strategy is changing, you will want to pay people for doing different things. And so you need to realign your incentives to those different things. The other is something you touched on at the beginning of the presentation, which is the other way of looking at it is to say our strategy is changing, therefore our marketing strategy is changing, our finance strategy is changing, and our people strategy is changing. And if our people strategy is changing, then we need to think about changing our reward strategy to be part of our overall people strategy. So either you're looking at this from a people strategy perspective and what reward program supports our people strategy, or you can think about it rather more simply is what do we want people to do, therefore we should pay them for doing those things.
Great. Well said. Thank you, John. There's so much more to be discussed and to share. Thank you, but I think that's all we can have of you for now. Thank you.
Okay, great to participate. Thank you, Evelyn.
Much appreciated. Great insights, John. We have to move on now because we're going to move on to the next segment by Naveen. So just to recap, we looked at these two models, the total rewards model and the total rewards strategy here, which is the main focus. And now I'm going to hand the time over to Naveen, who will be sharing a little bit more about putting together a reward strategy focusing on one of the factors. And he will also be sharing more about Compass, the compensation management software.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you for the time. And it's been a pleasure listening to you and John conversate about all the calm philosophies out there. Let me quickly jump into and walk you through what we are doing at Laserbeam. And let me pull up my slide deck here. Okay, so we all know that, as you rightly said, the last year has been tough, and we're moving into 2021 with the whole new process about how we work with our employees distributed, and how do we then plan to build compensation programs that supports the employees of today's world. So let me go ahead and start with a note here. The first thing is employees are highly aware of the market pay and their worth in the market, because there is so many tools out there today. It talks about Glassdoor, PayScale, PayFactor, Salary.com. There's so many products out there. There you can go out and check what your worth is, your skill based, and so on. And from there, you have an ability to actually go back and bargain with your HR and comp committees. So it has become all the more important today, the HR and the comp committees, to ensure that the comp strategies they put together are well ironed, and they are very focused on retaining and attract the great talents out there in the market. So without further ado, we'll just go ahead and talk about what we're going to cover in this session. Okay, we're going to walk through how to build a comp strategy that revolves around your business, your organization's focus, and the culture that you exhibit, and then take an incentive model. So within the comp strategy, there is so many factors out there. It can be salaries, incentives, benefits, training and learning engagements, and so on. But we're going to focus specifically on building bonus and incentive models. So we'll look at how you can build a simple incentive model and how these incentive models would fit your company and culture. And once we look at that, we'll walk you through how this can be easily automated and used in a specific tool. Okay, and moving on, I'm going to walk you through how these reward strategies can be put together. So our experience with many companies indicate that companies uh, drive their comp strategies and philosophies around the culture, and culture has become a key factor in building a comp strategy. So if you want to put together a solid rewards program, and and then that works for your organization, you need to bring your culture and your strategy, align your strategy with your culture, so you can put together the best rewards program that can attract and retain talent. So having said that, I'm going to walk you through how you can kind of align these two together. Okay. So developing a reward strategy, as I said, is primarily driven by your culture and what kind of attributes. This is not just limited to the attributes defined here. You can look at a culture that is tied back to the value that your organization exhibit, the performance of your employees, and then the behavior and then the potential. So if you take these four attributes as part of your culture, then you can align your rewards programming around the salary, incentive, benefits, and learning. So when you put together a total rewards program, your program has to cater to these four at least when you are putting together a program. So for instance, obviously the salary part is there, which is still holds good, and you build it based on the merit adjustments, promotions, and kind of a lump sum awards. And then an incentive model can be broadly classified into direct bonuses, target-driven bonuses, and bonus scorecards. We'll kind of touch these because the primary objective is to kind of run around the incentive programs, and uh, and then we will take one of the incentive model to deep dive into it. Then we have the benefits. So the benefits are, the health, dental, the pensions, and the 401ks, and options that would fit in. And then the kind of a learning and training environment that you set up within your organization. When you're building a learning program, you're going to look at what is your organization goals are, and is your program driven by specific goals that you train your employees towards achieving that goal. And if you have identified that, then you look at what kind of methods that you'd use for implementing the training programs, and how do you optimize that. So this is kind of a high level strategy that you would kind of align your rewards program with your culture. The next thing you want to do is kind of look at how do we put these into different phases over here. So when you're planning a comp strategy, you want to look at the different phases that you want to put together as part of your comp strategy. So you need to initiate a comp plan for your organization. The first thing is to kind of conceptualize it. So a simple thing when you plan to do a conceptualize is to take an outside-in approach. What that means is like okay, that you have a comp philosophy you're planning to put together. You want to focus on what your employee needs are, and then to look at what is your organization's values are, so that when you put together a plan, that it takes care of your employee specific needs, and then obviously the budget that is required to support any model that you plan to put together. So your concepts should involve the employee needs first, and then the required budgets for that process. Then we're going to look at how do you want to design this program. So that when it comes to a design space or the phase, it's going to be pretty simple. It has to be as simple as possible and not complicated. So when you explain to your employees why he's making X dollars, and how these dollars uh, are put together and where this money comes from, so that becomes very important. So as long as it is pretty straightforward and uncomplicated, the design model should align with that. And obviously, the next step is to take this program and implement it. So to implement this program, obviously HR is going to work through the process. And then once HR is working through the process, they take this model and give it to the managers who manage the budgets and do the operations. And obviously the implementation should be seamless, so the managers can easily explain and distribute the budgets or the reward programs. And for all this, you would need to have a tool that kind of supports your process. either from monitoring the budgets and to monitor real time what's the spend and improve your communication within the employees, managers, and the management. So the three prongs are coming together to kind of take this whole thing and manage. And finally, a total reward statement that can clearly show what the employee want to look at, and it's kind of focused on the employee. So you can already see that when you conceptualize this, you have put employees first, and then when you finally provide the reward statements, it comes back to that it is targeting an employee. So and the entire steps to complete this process is pretty straightforward and simple. Okay, so let me now move on to how do you design this program. So for this exercise, we're going to look at incentive models. So within the incentive models, we'll look at the different types of bonuses and talk about how these bonuses can be designed, and the bonus programs can be designed, and what kind of bonus programs would best fit for your organization. So first thing first is you obviously need to look at the employee population that your organization constitutes. So then you look at the type of job they do, and look at the mixed population, whether it's a white collar or blue collar, and then within your organization, what is really driving the productivity and the engagement of your employees. So you can take multiple factors for defining those. So like it could be a performance is a factor that drives pay, and the productivity or innovation. So ideally speaking, depends upon what kind of organization you are. So if it's a service-based company or a knowledge-based company or a manufacturing or a productivity-based company, you can design what kind of factors you would want to influence as part of your bonus programs. So once you have identified that, you can broadly classify your bonuses into three types. Your direct bonuses. These are bonuses that can be part of your budget or something that you can give it as spot awards. This can be directly driven by your manager's discretion. They can decide what award can be given from their allocated budget, or a more planned, structured model, which is a target-driven bonuses, which is basically tied to by job or by grade, what is the target percentage set on their annual salary, and then build a bonus program around that. And finally, for senior management and senior executives, you can build bonus scorecards. The scorecards more goal-based design. So each goal has got a net weight, and based on the goal and the weight, you can define the threshold, target, and superior, and build some bonus scorecards. So we're going to take the target-driven bonus and dive deeper into it. And let me walk through how you can build a simple bonus program based on target. So as I said, you want to look at how do you want to pay your employee. So what's your driving factor for your payout? So if your driving factor is going to be performance is the criteria for your employees' remuneration and payout, you can look at direct bonus, which is purely tied back to the performance that they achieve in their job. Or you can look at a target bonus, which is primarily driven by profitability and performance. So profitability in the sense like the organization's revenue, EBITDA, and so on. And then the performance is purely driven by either an individual's performance or the team's performance as it works with the different participants within the team. And finally, if you want to build a scorecards, it can be looked at based on the achievements of the individuals and the achievement of the organization. So this is again tied back to profitability, and the scorecards can be a mixed bag of the corporate versus the individual versus the team and so on. But again, purely driven by a goal as an attribute. So you take a range, a threshold, a target, kind of a slider rule, which talks about, okay, if I meet 80% of my goal, how much percentage of bonus I can take, and if I do more than what is supposed, or if I achieve like a superior, which is like 110 or 120% of my goal, then what can be my achievement. So we have seen multiple organizations use this kind of models, and these models are not necessarily tied back to achievement as a percentage of their pay, but it can also be a number that they achieve. So it can be either a number factor, meaning that the number of M&As the organization dealt with, or um, it can be a qualitative figure that can be translated into a set percent. So so all this is options are available when you would want to build an incentive program, and you can have a combination of this. If you want to look at the shop floor employees, you want to look at okay, we want to do a direct bonus for them, and then the mid management and managers, you can build a target based bonus, and for the senior executives, you can build a bonus scorecard. So obviously, a mixed bag is always possible. Okay, so now let me just take a target bonus and walk you through a simple example how we can build a target bonus. So the most important thing before you build your bonus program, in case if it's going to be a target driven bonus, is to understand what is the total cash comp that your employees take today. So it is a combination of your salary, your pay increases, your bonuses and other remunerations, and then that constitutes your total comp, total cash comp. So the total comp would also include your options and restricted options, but your TCC, the cash comp, is good enough to look at just the bonus and the salary components. So once you know the total cash comp factor, then you have the ability to look at what is uh, the market pay for a similar position or a job within your organization. Market pay can be drawn from different vendors out there. You can get it from like Mercer or any of the vendors out there who can provide you market data. And then you're going to do your benchmarking of this and 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 evaluate then what is the best fit for a specific job or a specific grade that your organization can match up to the market data. So once you have this and you have your overall budgets in picture, you can now run some numbers. So data becomes critical here. So you can take your data and analyze and see what percentage of salary best fits for my employees and my organization. So so you define your targets based on your salaries, and that is your base element that's been set up. So the targets can either be a fixed percent of your salary, or it can be a dollar amount for a specific job. Okay. Right. Now that we have looked at the targets, so we're going to slowly build on top of this target. So for my base model that I'm putting together here, I'm going to look at two factors for my incentives. The factors are basically the bonus, I call them the bonus buckets. So the bonus buckets are primarily driven by corporate and individual performance. So there are two pieces out here. So I have an overall bonus. So if I get 20% of my target, and I want to look at what is going to be my bonus bucket. So the 20% is going to be divvied up between the corporate and the individual portion. 30% goes into the corporate, 70% as my individual. So what this really means is like, if I'm going to do a payout of my bonus to my employees, 30% of their bonus is going to come from my organization's performance. That means from bottom up, every employee has contributed to the growth of the organization, and I want to take 30% of individuals bonus because of the corporate performance. So here also you can actually define the corporate percentage. You can apply a multiplier on top of it, because let's say if your organization has set a goal like 100% revenue target, and if they meet 100% of the revenue target set up, then you can provide 100% of the 30%. And in case if you think that they did superior to that, you can always do a 1.1 multiplier on top of the corporate. And then the bringing focus back onto the individual piece is that's purely driven by the individual's performance. So here I am using the individual performance to kind of correlate it back to um, a guideline here. So the guideline is to ensure that the performance rating is tying back to the guideline. So for example, I have a 5-point scale. So if the 1 and 2 performance rating, I wouldn't give anyone a bonus. And if it is a 3, 4, and 5, I have tied it back to a 50%, 100, and 110%. So that's like meets expectation, exceeds expectations, or superior expectations. So it can be a numeric or any form of performance data that you can try back to. Okay. So once we have this performance rating has been set up, let me show you how this can be translated back to a payout. So here, employee John Doe, he's a manager automation. His job or position is manager in manager automation. He takes home 100,000 per annum, and based on the position, I have set 20% as the target. So your organization can use position as a factor to set targets, or it can use grade or any of the other factors like geo, tier, location, offices. Um, so you can define which are best fits for your organization. So I'm using target by position. So the position manager automation is set as a 20% target.
Hey,
Okay.
Naveen, I'll just jump in very quickly.
Sure.
It seems like with the COVID situation, companies that are looking to really encourage employees to still work very closely in teams, because so many people are working from home, do want to use rewards to try and influence that sort of behavior. So it seems that there is an added emphasis now on collective goals, and hence
Mhm.
rewards, collective rewards as well, to encourage that sort of behavior, like team cohesion, and collaboration, and enhanced communication, and so on. Do you have any thoughts about that? Because that can also be encouraged through a structure like this, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic question. So one of the things that I have said here is you are breaking your bonus into two buckets here, the corporate bucket and then the individual portion. So in today's world, I think you can further break this individual portion into two separate components. One can be a team bonus or the team portion. The other one can be an individual portion. So let's say 70%, I would put 20% on team portion and then a 50% towards the individual portion. What that really means is as a team, if you have worked in building a team-based solutioning, or you have worked with your other team in promoting mentoring and other factors, then you are going to be eligible to get that 20% of that target. So in reality, that would be a very structured way to say, okay, is this team working well together? Because
Mhm.
if every team member within the team is going to make 20%, at an organization level, you can actually monitor and say, is my organization working as a team? Because if that portion of the budget is going to be expensed out 100%, then you know that your teams are all gelling well, and they are contributing to a common goal. So absolutely, yeah, you can definitely break these components into different attributes that fits your organization.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, wonderful. So once you have built this model over here, so I'm seeing like John Doe's 100,000, he's eligible for a $20,000 bonus, and John is didn't do very well. He met his expectations, so as per the guideline, he's eligible to receive 50% of his bonus. So assuming that the organization did very well, so I'm going to do the 100% payout over here. I'm going to take 100% off the 30%, which is your $6,000. I'm going to do that. I want to get that piece. I'm guaranteed that piece because of my corporate portion is guaranteed. And then on the individual portion, since I am rated 3, I'm going to look at John's number, which is 50% of the guidelines. So John is going to only make 50% of the 70%, which is about 7,000 in dollar terms. So once he makes out here, then you can see that he's going to make a total dollars of $13,000 against his $20,000 target. So this is a very simple way to kind of build a simple target-driven bonus program. The benefits are numerous. So you can, once you put this kind of a program, you can actually have an insight about what is the overall budget requirements is going to be. Because 30% of the overall target dollar is going to be controlled by your organization's budget. So when you go back to your management and want to get the sign off on the budgets for this year's bonuses, you can have a clear picture. Okay, 30% of the set dollars are going to be tied back to the corporate portion. So they get a clear buy-in on that. The remaining 70% is based on individuals' achievements. And also, when you are defining the guidelines based on performance rating, you can actually kind of squeeze the budget down into the overall performance of the organization, and you'll exactly know what would be the individual portions requirement. So when you build a program around like this, the people can clearly see that what is going to be your budget requirements and how these budgets are kind of aligned with the overall objectives. Okay. All right. Having said that, let me quickly jump into the tool. We're going to have very little time. I'll try to be quick, but let me try to give you enough information how this can be achieved in a simple tool. Um, okay. All right. So with the Laserbeam's Compass application, you have a complete control about how you can run your compensation programs. That includes the merit piece and then the bonus piece. So we're going to focus on the bonus piece today. So let me quickly look at the bonus. So the bonus program gives you an insight into what is your overall bonus for a specific manager or at an organization level. So you can jump between organization and direct manager levels. So at the organization level, what is my overall budget? I have got an $18 million budget and I've spent 5 million so far, and I got about 12 million out there. So with my 294 managers who handle budgets, this amount is going to be rolled out to them. And you can actually look at how much has been given to each manager and so on. So this is kind of the end result. I can show you how we can build the plan actually. So let me start with the bonus planner. So this is very similar to what we saw in the deck. So we're going to look at how you can build a target. So let's say in your organization you have one target, then you can put one target. If you have multiple targets, let's say if you're a project-based organization. So if your employees complete a project and they are awarded a dollar or based on a project, then you can define project-based targets too. So in this case, I'm going to have like one target over here, just build one target, and you can use proration rules and other factors. But let me go ahead and quickly go into how do you model this. So here you have an ability to just model this by different attributes. So when you're going to do a bonus modeling, I'm going to use like the target is going to be driven based on the grades and the performance rating. But you can pick any factor. You know, if you are an organization which is spread across multiple countries, then you can use different countries and different currencies to do your model. But for simplicity's sake, we're going to use grade and a performance rating over here. So we're going to use define some matrices, and then we're going to build a bonus plan. So bonus plan here, let me show you how this plan is being built. In simple terms, I'm using performance rating and grade and performance rating. So for a grade A01, the target is set as 20%. And then based on the performance rating, the payout maximum an employee can get is 50 to 110%. So this is the factors I'm using. And for this, I'm using a multiplier, which is basically if the corporate piece is 100%, then I would just set 100% of that is going to be rolled out. So multiplier is 1. So I set this here, and I can always do some compare matrices. Just I have one plan over here. I want to limit that. And quickly, once I complete this, I can go ahead and do my model here. So I can go ahead and do a model here. I took the target. I'm going to divvy them up into two buckets, the corporate and then the individual. And then finally, I can tie them to different groups within the company. A group is basically you can put together a sales group, a management group, a HR team. You can have different groups, and for each group you can tie them to different budgets, and then you can divvy the budget to different heads, so corporate and individual over here. So for all this together, once you have done a base model, you can actually use our analyzer helps in kind of looking at what's the best fit for your organization. So for example, this is the data that you can take and analyze with your market data. So I have my internal data, and if I'm going to pay 100% to the market, meaning that I bring everybody to 100% pay factor to the market range, then it's I would need about 7% additional to my uh, budget. So that is about 1.2 million. So if I decide to pay 95% to the market, then you only need about $300,000. And if I'm going to pay to 90%, you're already paying to 90% of the market. So I think you're all set. So at this stage, you can actually look at using the slider and deciding what would be my budget requirements for the year. So your underlying data, your performance rating compared to the market by employees is going to give you a clear picture about how the whole budget can be planned for your bonuses and what is the gap required. So once you have a set number in mind, you can actually take it and look at how much I would need for bringing the people to the market of 95%. So by performance rating, or you can pick any factor, or by department, you can decide, okay, what will be the bonus dollars that is required to pay them to bring them to 95% of the market. And then a nice graph to tell you the gap, so on. So this is a nice way to look at the numbers. Once you are good with the numbers, you can take these numbers and go and distribute them in one shot. So you can take these dollar amounts and then go ahead and distribute. Before distribution, you have an ability to control what to distribute and kind of do you release the 100% of the budget, or you want to adjust them, you can do it. So by manager, you would know. So I'm going to release about 15% of my budget, which is tied back to, which is kind of relates to 18 million. And then so far I have spent about 5 million, and then the balance is 12 million out there. So this is a real time. So at real time, you can know what your managers are spending and what's my budget position and so on. And once you have built all this program, it's time for you to roll this out to your managers so they can start spending the dollars. So I will distribute this and then finally go into a rewards payout. So at the rewards payout phase, I can look at any team. So let me look at Amanda's team here. So Amanda has got 3 reportees into her, and I'm going to look at some basic information. Let me switch to the bonus tab. So let me look at the Amanda's bonus. So the overall budget and what's this balance. So I can scroll down. Again, all this is configurable for you. So he has a target. So in this case, let me look at Travis. Travis has a performance rating of 4. He is set about 0 to 100% is the guideline. 20% is his target. And then the corporate amount is about 30%. So 30% of the corporate, which is 6,000. And then finally the individual. So I can provide 100% to Travis. Again, Shirley is also 100. So I'm going to give 75% to Shirley. And finally, performance to Andrew is a 1. So I'm not going to give him any percent increase here. So I can set this up. and you can see my budget is getting utilized automatically. So once it's done, and I'm all set. So that is as simple as that. You can run your comp program and distribute your compensation. And finally, you can go back and run some reports against your compensation data. And I'll maybe pull up a total reward statement. A total reward statement, something very simple. You can have a cover letter, and then finally a letter which talks about the different pay elements, the bonuses and commissions, if you have overtime, shift differentials, and so on, and then the different attributes that constitutes to your pay elements. And a total reward statement can be built and circulated handy to your employees. So this is a quick run through the whole process. We just ran a little more, but I think this comes to a completion of my presentation. Thank you all for listening, and over to you, Evelyn. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Naveen. Thank you for sharing with us how software like Compass can really help to make the entire modeling and budget management process so much easier. And I think the beauty of it is that you can actually run simulations and actually do your number crunching a lot more effectively. I've seen the product at work, and I think it really saves us from having to slave over Excel spreadsheets. Hand this time over now to Junjie. I think we're going to have our Q&A. We have quite a number of questions, I see.
All right. Thank you, Evelyn, Naveen, and John for sharing your thoughts on compensation and benefits. We will be moving into the Q&A segment in just a couple of minutes. I am aware that we are running out of time, so we will be extending the Q&A session by up to 30 minutes for those who have asked their questions. You are free to stay on, but I understand that it's a busy day and some of you may have to go. But before we get there, I would just like to flash a quick QR code to our post-webinar survey. So let me just get this up. All right. So your feedback is important and we really want to hear it. For those who missed the link to the sandbox environment within Laserbeam's Compass, you can still indicate your interest in this survey, but slots are limited. So quick fingers. Yep. We'll now be moving on to the Q&A session. And yeah, I believe we do have a couple of questions. Evelyn, would you like to take the first one? We are a small company. Any advice or tips to implement reward strategies?
Yeah, I'm happy to share my thoughts, but I think it'd be great to hear from John as well, particularly since I know John works quite extensively with startups in particular. So John, do you have any input on this one about smaller organizations?
Smaller organizations are not necessarily easier to manage. Sometimes they can have their own complexities, but usually you can understand who's in the organization, what they're doing, what the culture is, without having to deal with a widely dispersed workforce. So just to think, what are the priorities of your organization? If it's a startup, often cash is short at hand, and you can't go around giving bonuses. Then you pay in equity instead of cash. And the other is really to think about bonuses in terms of the culture. So I'll give you an example. I'm an advisor to a startup, actually in the HR.tech space, but that's a different thing. And the CEO came to me one day and he said, how can I set KPIs for my people and then give them bonuses based on those KPIs? And he was rather surprised by my response, because my response is, don't do that. Right? Don't set KPIs for individuals and KPI, well, you can set KPI, but don't reward people on their individual KPIs. And he said, well, why not? And I said, well, your principal role is to, you know, get your product developed, get it out to market, sell it to people. I said, if you're dealing with individual rewards on bonuses for people, you're going to spend half your life dealing with that rather than what your priorities should be. So just giving an example. So, and he said, well, how do I pay people? I said, well, if you've got some cash left over at the end of the year, go to your board and ask them to pay a bonus to people, right? Keep it simple, keep it within the bounds of what the company can afford, and keep it focused on everyone working together towards the same goal.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure who answered that question, but please let us know if you have any other questions or you'd like us to elaborate further.
All right, thank you, John, and thank you, Evelyn. We have another question here. How do you communicate your reward strategy and engage your team in this COVID period? Would anybody like to have a go at this?
Yeah, let me take this. So one of the things that you can do is, um, we work with different teams. So for the planning piece, you can always use your uh, a team meeting with the HR and the manager along with the team to target about what the strategy is going to be, and uh, and then this is something you put together your goals initially at the beginning of the year, and once you have the goals defined, then you take the rewards program and tie them back to this, and walk this through with your team, and once this is done, then periodic review of the goals and meeting the goals against the reward strategy is measured and monitored by the manager. And once the manager has the feedbacks are provided back into the system, then you roll out the reward plan that you have already preset. So the communication really starts way before, since because we are all in a distributed world now. So the communication is defined at the very beginning of the year when you're setting the goals, how your targets are being set. And then you kind of tally up these targets as you work towards achieving those goals.
All right, thank you, Naveen. I hope that answers your question. Moving on to the next one. Should we involve or engage employees in rewards design? This is open to the floor.
I'm happy to make a comment about that. The answer is maybe. And again, it sort of depends a little bit on the culture of the organization. But if you're paying for people to do something, then they need to be involved in agreeing what it is they're doing. And this is more about strategy clarification exercises than rewards in particular. So yes, you should get, you can get employees' input. You can on what are the key measures. You should socialize that. You should get feedback. You should adjust it. So in that sense, yes. What you shouldn't do is involve employees in the question of how much they get, because that will just lead to conflict and tears and all sorts of unpleasantness. So even when I'm working with CEOs or with remuneration committees who are looking at CEO pay, the CEO is very much involved in agreeing what the performance measures should be that the CEO is measured on, but the amount that the CEO receives is a decision that's taken without the CEO's involvement, or ideally it should be taken without the CEO's involvement.
All right, that's very interesting. We do have one last question. The first phase of compensation strategy targets employee needs. Can you elaborate on this? So I
All
believe
right.
this was covered previously.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Let me take this one. So when you're putting together your comp plan, right, the you want to make sure that it targets your employee needs. So we had like four different buckets. We put it out there. You know, the value, the culture, then the potential, and then the behavior. So you can draw some parallels out of that. So for instance, let's say your employee needs are evaluated based on your overall engagement. Let's say you have identified the employee um, basically is in a scale where his potential is at par, but he was want to move into a different role, so he needs to get his potentials improved, or his engagement improved. So for that employee, your training and learning becomes a critical factor for him, so to build the gap or bridge the gap. So then that employee's requirements are more training based. So if an employee is highly skilled and he is in a high demand kind of a position in the market, then you want to look at the market benchmarks and then adequately reward him based on the factor. So then it boils down to the pay elements that you're currently paying. And sometimes the employees are more attracted towards short-term rewards, meaning that every 3 months you get compensated one way or other, because that motivates. So the employee is lacking motivation because of continuous feedback mechanism is not there in the company. Then you build a continuous feedback mechanism, which also includes a reward program that can support that. So this could be very simple things like um, you know, uh, some kind of spot bonuses that you can define and target them. So the employee needs are primarily observed either from learning or from pay elements or from the different benefits. So there's this new family member in the employee's family. So do we need to increase his benefit program, or we change the enrollment model because he is looking at a long-term strategy? So can we refactor how the pension system works for the employee? So these are different ways to look at how you can target uh, exactly towards an employee's requirements. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Naveen. We do have one last question. What company size can use Laserbeam technologies? For example, 100 employees and above, or is there a certain number in mind? I think this is for you, Naveen.
Yeah, I think so. I think 100 would be a good number. So our smallest employee population is 199 to a largest about 50,000 plus. So the smallest, when I say it's 199, is again the kind of organization they are. They're R&D facility, especially running medical devices and medical equipment. So the per capita earning of the individuals are large. So really looking at the size really doesn't matter, but then I would say the bang for the buck would be somewhere after 100 employee population. Okay.
All right, I do believe there is one other question, but I guessed job grades. Okay, I think that's about all for the question and answers. I am. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh no, we don't have any more questions. I just want to end this off by saying thank you everyone for the exciting Q&A session. We want to remind you that uh, we do have a post-webinar survey. The QR code is on the screen, and it would be great if you could pop in and just give us your feedback. We really do value your input. I also want to emphasize again that if you are interested in getting access to that sandbox environment within Laserbeam's campus, make sure you indicate so in the survey. If you missed out on the links earlier, the QR codes will be on the screen. And that's all for today. I'd like to thank you all for joining us again. And until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. If you have further questions, you can email us. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you then. Good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.